I'm very glad today to speak with you, and I was very pleased and really touched by all these questions that I received from the G Global platform. Indeed, there are a lot of interesting questions about the global economy, about Kazakhstan, about the G20. And I was wondering, when I wanted to speak with you today, what I should be talking about. Talking about the global financial system in Kazakhstan. Why? Well, I think we have to think about the state of the world today through a different concept. And I will call it the new geography of international finance. Remember, we were looking at the world before from maybe one major global economy, the US and Europe, and the rest of the world. We can call it the core and the periphery. But today I think this concept doesn't make sense anymore. There is no more core and there is no more periphery, because the new major players in the global financial system are going to be major stakeholders, because this is in these countries where we are getting growth. So what's happening in China, what's happening in Brazil, what's happening in Russia or India and Kazakhstan, for example, are going to have a bigger impact what it used to be 10 or 20 years ago. So forget about one global economy, one major currency, and let's think about the global economy not anymore from the core and the periphery, but from a multitude group of players who wants to play a role in the stability of the global financial system. But let me ask you, what is the problem facing the global economy today? If you watch the news, if you read the newspaper, every day people are telling you there is a major crisis. Crisis every day. Cyprus, Spain, Greece, Italy maybe. What's happening? Why we are talking every day about crisis? Do we have a problem? Yes, we have a problem. We have to find a solution to restore economic growth in order for the Western world to revive and to get back to a major path for bringing growth and employment to their people. Okay? Since 2007, the global economy has been facing major challenges. Remember, what we call it the Great Recession. It started in the US and after went to Europe, and every country in the world were affected. There was a lot of policy responses. Remember the major G20 Head of State Summit. And the major one, and I think one that will be a historical one, was the one in London, the famous G20 Summit in London in 2009, that provided a collective response to deal with this crisis. And there was the aid of international cooperation. There was a commitment, a willingness to make sure that we will prevent the mistake that policymakers in the interwar years created the global recession and the Great Depression. Policymakers overreacted for the benefit of all. But we are still, apparently, dealing with another crisis, a major one in Europe. We call it the Eurozone crisis. Europe today is facing major challenges. A banking crisis, a fiscal crisis, an economic crisis. As you saw, 2 years ago, we were talking about Greece. We were talking that Greece can exit the Eurozone. Today, we are talking about Cyprus, a small country, a small island, who can affect the rest of Europe. Why? Because everything today is interconnected. The banking sector, or maybe a collapse of the banking sector in Cyprus, will have a major impact in the rest of Europe. So we have to deal with Cyprus because Cyprus is a member of the Eurozone, so we are sharing a common currency. We have to deal with Spain and to deal with the recapitalization of the banking sector in Spain. And since the beginning of the crisis in Europe, European policymakers did a lot. Of course, maybe they were late, but you have to understand when you share a common currency with 70 countries, it's always difficult to finalize an agreement. But yes, Europe is facing a major problem. Are people willing to pursue austerity, fiscal consolidation, and unemployment increasing day by day. It's not easy to live in Europe these days because there is a mood of pessimism. And when you come to Kazakhstan, this is completely a different atmosphere. Growth, people seems optimistic about the future. There is willingness to invest, willingness to do things. I live in France. I love my country, but I'm worried. I'm worried about what will happen in the next 10 years. Are we going to pursue austerity only, or can we find the right path between austerity and growth? I think this is a major challenge for Europe. And this is not only the challenge for Europe, but for the US also. And we know the US and Europe are still a major part of the global economy. So, what are we talking about today? People are saying we have to deal with this financial crisis in Europe, and we have to get back to growth. This is, I believe, the priority number one for the world. Can we get growth going? Yes, I think this is possible. The other aspect that I wanted to talk to you about is we know since the beginning of this financial crisis, there has been a lot of experimentation in the world. Remember, quantitative easing. What are we talking about, quantitative easing? If you're an economist, you said, yes, this is the capacity of the central bank to create more money in the system and to be able to give money to the economy and to channel credit in order for companies and consumers to invest and to spend again. This is what the US has been doing since 2007 to repair the banking system and to provide liquidity to the consumers, to the companies in order to get credit going again. People are very concerned. So much liquidity has been created in Europe, in the US, but also in England, in UK. The Bank of England has been also experimenting quantitative easing. What about Japan? The same thing. Japan is going to experiment major quantitative easing because they have to fight deflation. So, major change of monetary policies in the three major countries in the world: Japan, the US, UK. Is all this, accommodative monetary policy will end in tears? We don't know. Maybe inflation will come because people will say, is the value of money will be there in 10 years, or we are going to have a major increase of inflation? We don't know. There is so much uncertainty in the global economy that we have to be prepared for different scenarios. So when I learned that Kazakhstan was interested in embarking in a project called Anti-Crisis, I felt that was a good idea, more than a good idea, a good concept. Can we bring together here in this country, in Astana, major experts around the world to promote a framework and to provide not only ideas, but a framework and a concept to discuss what can be done at the global level to deal with this multidimensional financial crisis. But as I said, I've been talking about the US, I've been talking about Europe, but the rest of the world is facing other challenges. Kazakhstan is not dealing with a fiscal crisis. Kazakhstan is dealing with, growth, capacity to continue to grow. This is the same thing in China. Growth in Brazil, but make sure that the stability is there. China needs to change its business model, its economic model that was really geared toward export, toward external demand. And China now needs to be thinking about more domestic demand, more domestic growth, to create the social safety net that is needed for the people in China to consume more, because the consumption rate in China is very low compared with the Western world. So we have a divergent global economy, US, Europe, low growth, fiscal consolidation, banking challenges, and the rest of the world is growing. Can we find a way again to become one global economy? I think this is possible, and I'm glad that Kazakhstan has decided to embark in this initiative on anti-crisis. When I look at this global platform where there are a lot of questions that, what Kazakhstan can do, is because people want to be part of becoming a stakeholders, or becoming not only a stakeholder, but also providing inside ideas to the rest of the world. what Kazakhstan can do. Kazakhstan, as I said maybe before, is just a price taker in the global economy. You have to rely on the price of commodities that is not setting by you, but by the rest of the world. You are trading with Europe. You are trading with the US, so two major trading partners. So what happened is these two major countries has an impact on Kazakhstan. What's happening in China has a major impact. So let's try to come up as this Astana Economic Forum and on this anti-crisis project with a platform for discussions. Let's look first, what are the problems that the global financial system is facing? If we find the right consensus about the challenges, we can come up with some solutions that can be agreed by, I think, the major experts around the world. But we're not going to come up with the magic solutions, because at the end, it's the people, it's the countries who have to make decisions. Is it in the interest of the country to implement structural reform? Is it the interest of the country to go through fiscal consolidations? But when in Europe, you share a common currency, your destiny is not only one country, but all the members of the Eurozone. So it's not that France will decide for his country, or Germany will decide for him. This country needs to share their common future. And I think Europe has still a destiny, and Europe will be able to deal with this crisis. We have to go to a new dimension in Europe. You know, we agreed to have a common currency. We have to go to a new step, to have a banking union, a fiscal union, and a political union. So we might have in the next few years the creation of a new set of institutions in Europe to cement the monetary union. And I'm telling you that because I think this is what's happening at the global level. We need to think about a new set of institutions that will bring the new world economic order, reflecting the importance of new major stakeholders. Remember, Bretton Woods was created in 1944, and because it brought back, the capacity, thanks to the US, to rebuild Europe, but to rebuild the global economy after World War II. And we created a set of institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, the UN, the GATT, which is now becoming the World Trade Organization, to bring, stability and growth to the rest of the world. And I think the challenge of our generation today is to start to think about a new set of institutions that will reflect the balance of power in the 21st century. What we are seeing today, and what my concern is, that maybe there is less willingness to cooperate. There is less multilateralism. There is less willingness to come up with global solutions, but to think more about, national policies first. Or are we facing maybe a phase of deglobalization as we knew it before, where we have, major integration of capital markets? Maybe. Are we dealing with a more fragmented world, a more segmented? Maybe. So that's why I think in Kazakhstan and in Astana, the Astana Economic Forum for this anti-crisis conference, we have to be honest. Let's face the problem. Let's look at all the problems facing the global economy. I'm not talking here about green growth. I have not been talking about major global warming issues. I've been really talking about global macroeconomics. But I'm glad that Kazakhstan, who is going for the first time to be an observer as a G20, as Russia, the current chair, has invited Kazakhstan to join for the Head of State Summit, I think Kazakhstan should use that to come up with, making proposal and make some contribution to the G20 forum, which is still the major forum for international economic policy. I have received a lot of questions about the future of the international monetary system, renminbi, dollar, euro. But I think this is a medium-term question. We have to deal, as I said before, with a major problem. Let's get growth going. Let's reduce unemployment, because when people start to be optimistic, everything is possible in the world. Thank you for being able to be in Kazakhstan today in Astana. I really like your country. Every year I come here, I can see major changes. And I think this Astana Economic Forum has a capacity to be a very good platform to come up with some new ideas from a part of the world who was maybe not being part of the global economy 20 years, 25 years ago, who step by step is becoming a major stakeholders and wants to contribute to the world of ideas. At the end, you know, this crisis will be resolved, and I hope we are not going to talk about the Western Europe decline or the US decline, but for a more balanced economic growth, for a more balanced global economy, because we need the Western world and we need the rest of the world. We need Kazakhstan, we need the US, we need China, we need all of these countries who can contribute to the stability of the global economy and to make sure that financial crises will be less and less frequent, because it can create so much destabilization, not only to a country, but to the world. Thank you for giving me the capacity and the opportunity to speak with you today. And if you want to ask more questions on the G Global platform, please do so, and I will be happy to answer. Thank you again.